Now, there are lots of non-photographic lenses that you can adapt. I ought to know. I've adapted and tested many of them. One of my personal favorites is this one, the Zeiss 70mm to 120mm f3.5 Vario-Talon zoom projector lens. This lens, when adapted, covers a full-frame sensor. It's quite easy to adapt, and it takes great photos. Take a look at a few. I took these recently. Notice how sharp and colorful they are. Also, please notice the creamy bokeh. Now, this lens is popular with other photographers too. At the end of this episode, I linked to a gallery of Zeiss 70 to 120mm Vario-Talon images that were taken by other photographers. Now let's take a closer look at this lens and how I adapt it. This Zeiss Icon 70 to 120mm f3.5 Vario-Talon lens is made in Germany. Now, all the ones that I've ever purchased of this lens were from German sellers on eBay. Typically, these cost me about $100 US. Now, they do have a zoom ring on them. They're very well made, and they have excellent optics. Now, you might be interested to know that after I adapt these to a digital camera, the zoom still works. Now, there are actually two versions of this lens. The original Zeiss Icon version, which is a little bit older, and then there's the newer Zeiss ZETT, Z-E-T-T version, which is this one. It's made in Germany, just like the original one, and it's got the same optics, but it's just a little bit newer. It has newer coatings than the old version, but frankly, I've never been able to tell any difference between the images with the older version, the Icon, Zeiss Icon version, or the Zeiss ZETT version. The coatings, as far as I can tell, really don't make much difference. Now, the older version, the Zeiss Icon, is fairly common, whereas the Zeiss ZETT lens is more uncommon. Now, as you can see, the older version is a little bit different size than the newer version. The older version is a little bit taller, and also, as you can tell, the older version has a little bit larger diameter than the newer ZETT version. Now, there are many ways to adapt each of these lenses, and I've tried many of them. My favorite way is this one. I get one of these Pixco adapters. It's M58-M58, and it has a focusing range of from 36 millimeters to 90 millimeters. This focusing helicoid is available in both the original Pixco, P-I-X-C-O version, and a generic Chinese version. And either one will cost you, about $30 US. Now, how I adapt my Vario-Talon lenses to this Pixco focusing helicoid is quite simple. To mount them the normal way, I simply drop them into the focusing helicoid, and they fit very nice and snugly, so there is no reason to use glue. You can use glue if you'd like, but you really don't have to. So either one fits in the normal way quite nicely. Now, one thing I wanted to point out is that these lenses are known across the world for one primary characteristic, and that is their incredible swirly and twirly bokeh when they are mounted in reverse. Now, it's really easy to mount them in reverse. Just go back to your Pixco focusing helicoid and stick them in, and they fit quite tightly, as you can see. This is the Z version, and this is the original version. Now, the original version, because it's got a little bit larger diameter on the barrel, doesn't go in quite as deep as the newer version. As you can see, it goes in quite deeply. And they fit snugly. The zoom ring does work, and there's really no need to use glue. One thing that you're going to be interested in is this 37mm standard lens cap fits perfectly on the ends of either of these lenses. Great way to protect your lens, especially when mounted in reverse. Okay, so we've talked about how to mount and adapt the lens to the front of the focusing helicoid. What about the rear, the part that attaches to the camera? Well, that's quite easy. You get yourself a 52 to 58 millimeter step-up ring, and you screw that onto the back of the focusing helicoid. Then you get yourself a 55 to 52 millimeter step-down ring, and you screw that into the step-up ring like that. Then you get yourself a 52 millimeter reversing ring like these, and you screw them into your step-down ring, and then the mount attaches directly to your camera. Here's a adapter for a Nikon camera. Here's one for a Canon EOS. And here's a 52 millimeter reversing ring for a Pentax K. Now, here's a fourth one that is for Fuji X cameras. So I'll screw that on the end, and I'll show you how nicely that mounts on a Fuji X camera. Find the red dot on the adapter, and there you go. Look at that fit perfectly. And you use the focusing helicoid to focus your Vario-Talon lens. Please remember, though, that there is no aperture in this lens, so it's wide open all the time. I'm often asked two questions. Number one, do I prefer these Vario-Talon lenses to be mounted the regular way, or do I prefer that they be mounted in reverse? Well, for me, I think the swirly bokeh, when the lens is mounted in reverse, is absolutely outstanding. You get world-class, painterly, artistic images that really no other lens can produce. So all of my Zeiss Vario-Talon lenses are always mounted in reverse. The second question that I often receive is, which of the two versions do I prefer? Do I prefer the Zeiss Icon version, the older version, or do I prefer the Zeiss Z version, the newer one? Well, on mirrorless lenses, either one of them will focus to infinity. But on a DSLR camera, like this, with a mirror in it, the Zeiss Z lens will focus up to infinity, but the older Zeiss Icon lens on a DSLR will only focus to about 4 feet. So to sum things up, if you've got a DSLR camera like this one, get yourself a Zeiss Z version of the Vario-Talon lens. But if you've got a mirrorless camera like this one, I think you'll be happier with the older version because it's more available and cheaper, but you could also use the Z version as well. Your choice. Either way, you are going to have an incredible lens that produces absolutely unique and artistic bokeh.